This is a video on my spoken notes morning pages workflow in Tana. TLDR, I can speak my mind, capture the core bits of meaning, and organize them effectively for future use. I'll go over what it does, how to use it, the details of how it works, and some philosophical ramblings on the process. What it does. This workflow allows me to live transcribe my spoken notes, just riff off the top whatever's on my mind, then process this rough transcript into a list of propositions that is the simplest form of encapsulated meaning, which I'll go into details later in the philosophical ramblings. Then with those propositions, I can classify them either as an action or a note, which are my base level tags, or I could delete the node or pass it forward to the staging area where I can easily summarize and batch a group of propositions that I believe are related to each other into a single proposition and then tag it again as either a node or an action afterwards. So how to use it. When you call the spoken notes tag, the first visible field will be the rough notes, which is an audio-enabled field, meaning you can push the microphone button and begin talking. Alternatively, you could just type in your rough notes as well. Once you've completed your stream of thought, you can open up the clean notes field and trigger the AI field command, which will grab the propositions from the rough notes and tag them accordingly. The proposition tag has built-in command buttons for transforming the tag into an action or note, which will subsequently move it into the final notes field. If you have existing tags for actions or notes, you can simply merge these spoken notes tags into yours, as the spoken notes tags here contain no field information. They are simply directional markers for the commands. The proposition tag also has command buttons for deleting the node if you don't find the proposition useful, or passing it to the staging area. If you pass the nodes to the staging field, you can click the batch command button, which will summarize all the nodes into a single sentence. Afterwards, you can Command K, select node and siblings, followed by Command K merge, up arrow to skip to the bottom node, then combine these into a single proposition and transform into an action or note accordingly, which again will pass it to the final notes field. And there's also a command button for summarizing the rough notes into a single sentence for the spoken notes title. Now I'll go into the technical details behind all this. First up is the rough notes field, which, as I mentioned, is audio enabled, and it's also set to show while empty. So when a new spoken notes node is tagged, it'll be the only field that is not hidden to start. Next up is the clean list field, which has an AI prompt enabled, which you can see here. It grabs the rough notes and asks for a list of proposition statements in return. This field is also set to automatically add the proposition tag on all children. The clean list AI command can also be triggered from the command button shown here. Looking at the proposition tag next, we have a list of command buttons: action, note, staging, and delete. These are pretty straightforward, except for the command to move from one field to another. It's a bit of a workaround due to the current capabilities we have within Tana, and I would expect this to become much simpler at some point in the future. But for now, this command will work by moving the node out of the field to a child position on the spoken notes parent node, and then it moves all children within the spoken notes parent node into another field. The caveat here is that if you have any stray children outside of the fields, they'll get swept up into the direction of that second command as well. So be aware of that. The staging field and batch command are similar in setup to the clean list field and command button, except that in this case the staging field references itself in its prompt and summarizes the content into a single sentence. The title field and command also are very similar in structure, and then that field is referenced to build the title itself. Going back to the staging field, unfortunately, selecting all nodes within this field and merging is not possible to automate at this point in time, so we're stuck with the manual Command K, select node and siblings, followed by Command K merge. Actually, the purpose of merging is pretty useless overall here, unless you're using the clean notes special command, which I'll go into next. So what the clean notes special command does when it works is to take references from the rough notes and nest them as children under the related propositions. This deviates from the standard text processing summarization, which default to inline references. What allows either of these methods to work with the text processing command is the fact that it's the only way in Tana at the moment to structure the input into node text and node ID. So if I Command K open GPT log monitor, that allows us to look at what information is being sent to and returned by the AI commands. As you can see here, any AI prompt that's not in text processing will send a single chunk of text as the input. No matter how many fields you pull from or what you reference, it all gets summarized into a single chunk of text. Whereas the text processing structures both the node ID and the node text, which can then be referenced in the output. So I've got a hefty prompt here, which I crafted with the help of ChatGPT to attempt to direct these ID references to the child position of the propositions. But I believe it's fighting with some of the behind-the-scenes default settings within the summarization commands, perhaps the set meeting notes, which you can see triggered at the end there. When it does work correctly, we can merge similar propositions and pass the child references into the merged node, whereas when the references are in line and we attempt to merge, it eliminates all but the reference that's merged into. So on to some philosophical ramblings. Why I find this useful and how I conceptualize the process. I like this visual from Tiago Forte of overlapping circle patterns. To me, this is like a representation of the present moment at any given time. We have a composition of thoughts, feelings, sensations, all to varying degrees of importance, strength, prominence, noticeability. And the practice of morning pages or verbalizing a stream of thought into propositions is like separating these circles of the moment into the atomic bits that make them up, and they can be acted on accordingly. And I use the term proposition. It comes from Semantics. I got a paper linked here, and you can see the breakdown where just you're grabbing the core meaning bits from a string of text, your thought paragraph, and compressing it into the core bits that matter. And Tana's text processing agent does a lot of this by default. You have, get items, get entities, which you can customize and direct as well. But I notice with the summarization default in particular, it tends to batch up a layer higher than I would prefer. I like to break down the individual components as much as possible and then manually choose what I want to keep and summarize further, or what I want to remove as noise or irrelevant information. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of Tana, is that they allow so much customization in these workflows. So another way I visualize this process is like a Fourier transform equation, which allows for the segmentation of separate frequencies from a single waveform. This is also a partial inspiration behind the name thought of waves. I'll go into more of how I handle these threads and atomic bits in a video on the meta process behind my Tana setup. But for now, I just want to close on the utility of nested reasoning, chunking, and batching. My thoughts here are strongly influenced by another Tiago Forte article on the idea of progressive summarization. He discusses the concept in relation to highlighting and taking notes from what he reads, but I believe this concept is useful for one's own notes and thoughts, and in both directions, both chunking down and batching up. So when thinking about the big picture concepts of life, like going from that amorphous collage of circles, I think of chunking down, or breaking down the propositions, like sifting for gold. So not everything there is useful. It's finding the signal in the noise. And then batching up is taking those bits of gold and like building pyramids of layered meaning or reasoning, where at a quick glance we can trace the logic behind, say, an OKR or KPI or a goal, down to the projects and the actions and the thoughts, the propositions and the original string of thought that they stem from, all at a quick glance. This process is why I believe structured inputs within the text processing agent are so powerful. And I hope the Tana team does more in the future to allow for directing and manipulating these node ID references in a customizable manner. So in closing, got the template download down below, links to articles and other stuff I mentioned as well. Leave a comment, any Tana tutorials you want to see, or if you have thoughts or ideas on how this process could be improved or questions about it. Also got a Twitter account where I sometimes post ramblings of these conceptual processes as I'm forming them. So you can hit me up there if you want. Like, subscribe, yada yada. Peace.